Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. It's nice to have you back on with us.
Yeah. Is this the last session?
This is our session before the last. Was
Before.
supposed to be, yes, but it's the one before the last.
Okay. Hi, Antonia. I see you have another participant. As in the baby?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining early. As usual, we will give some of the other participants time to join, but we will start promptly at 6:05 p.m. Just to let you know, as you know, according to the schedule, we were supposed to end with agritourism, but unfortunately, our facilitator was not available and we heard about it last minute. But thankfully, I know that, and I did remember that Telly did offer to do an additional session. So we were able to get Telly to do that additional session for financial literacy. And then, of course, we will end with a bang on Thursday with agritourism. Also, ladies, our final practical session, the dates of that practical session will be communicated to you. So in the next 2 weeks or so, you will be doing your final practical session, which will be on a Sunday, and it's going to be on a smaller scale farm, just so that you have contrast between the two. And then we will be ending the Ag-cademy with a virtual graduation. So we do encourage you for those who did actually adhere to the guidelines and participated, were able to participate for 80% of the classes. We will be having that virtual graduation. And just please look out for the messages that we'll be sending in the WhatsApp group and so forth regarding the practical session and the virtual graduation. So in one more minute, we will start. Thank you so much, Telly, once again for agreeing to accommodate our group this evening. And I also have my colleague, Tara, online, who will be basically co-hosting and helping moderate and do all the technical stuff in the background as well. So thanks again, ladies. It's really nice to see all of you this evening.
Thank you, Keaton, for having me.
Yep, we can hear you.
We just give everyone about a minute before we start.
Sure.
Cool.
So just so you know, ladies, it is not a requirement for you to get your certificates. In order for you to get your certificate, it is not required, to do the practicals in order for you to get your certificate. You do need to attend, of course, 80% of the classes. So we have been tracking each and every class. And we did give the requirements. We have been using the Zoom names that you have been putting into the class. So the software that we use is pretty accurate, so we would know who has been attending class. Aside from that, the practical sessions, of course, are an additional component, I think more an enriching component to actually see what you're able to learn in action, but it is not compulsory to attend the sessions. Also, with regards to the PowerPoints and the remaining links to YouTube, all the PowerPoints will be uploaded into a Google Drive, and that will be emailed to you, and the link will also be sent through the WhatsApp chat as well. And the remaining YouTube videos will be uploaded between today, this evening, and tomorrow. So you will be getting these links as well. You can also just go into the HD channel and check out the HD Ag-cademy playlist, and you will get access to all of those videos there. Telly, I think we're all set to go.
Perfect. I'm just pulling up my cash flow canvas. Cash flow, here it is. Okay. Okay. Awesome. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
Cameron.
Good evening.
There you go. I see you. Evening, everyone. All right. So thank you. I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to fill in, and at least we can continue with our session. How has your sessions been going so far with agribusiness development? Good evening. Feedback, how have your sessions been going with the agribusiness development, and were you able to apply what we had done with the business model canvas? Hands? Who wants to share? Shirvani? Shirvani, you there? Okay, Alexia? Ladies, it's me, you know, I'm not a stranger. Okay, Alexia, can you do audio? Okay. Saibi?
Yes, so for me, so far,
Mhm.
the information that all learned to me, it just makes the process easier in starting off. So for me, I have not started as yet, but I feel more comfortable in going into it with the knowledge that I've gathered.
Mhm.
And I just feel like it will just be an ease when I actually start off and go into it.
Okay, perfect. Anyone else?
So far, it's been a very intriguing experience. I was one of those who was able to visit 4 estates, being in St. Lucia, and I have not been able to learn so much. I am happy that I was given the opportunity. It's been a lot to take in. However, it's also been fruitful as well. So I'm happy, I'm thankful, I'm appreciative.
Okay. Anybody else on the agribusiness planning and linking it to your financials? Allison? Deidre? Fiara? Floria, sorry. Ladies?
Good evening, Michaela here.
Ella, how are you?
For the agribusiness, I'm all right, thanks you.
I'm good.
The agribusiness, I believe, what really, I was thinking that registration for a business,
Mhm.
it really had me thinking and saying, yes, well, I really need to do that because unless it's registered, it does not really belong to you. Anybody can take it from you.
Exactly.
So yes. So I really did that as I had to put on my thinking cap for this one. So that was a good thing. And I was really grateful for that information.
Okay. Have you gone into planning yet?
And not, well, a little of that, but there is still a lot more work to be done on my behalf, with more planning and writing
Yes.
as I go along.
Okay. So today we are
Yes.
going to continue where we left off. I know we were a little bit of a rush, so I want to come back, take it a bit slow. We're going to revisit the business model canvas calculator and pretty much go take it from there and take that into our statements. And then we're also going to revisit the cash flow aspect so that you can pretty much be on top of that. And then revisiting the business model canvas, since I know you're also focusing on optimizing your business models, we'll be looking at new type of models that we can co-create. Okay, so let me share my screen. And I will grab the link for you. Go. Remember our best frozen fruits activity? That we did the last time? I'm just gonna go ahead and grab the link. Okay, so drop it in our chat. Where is our chat?
True, that's true. Sarah and you. Now you tell me that I didn't click. Yes, Sarah and you control. Yeah, that's true.
Ali,
That is
can you hear me? We can hear you. Okay. So we had started going through this dashboard, and we had at least identified a few potential revenue streams, right? But what we hadn't done was to start to put some numbers against those revenue streams. We started a little bit by identifying some of these streams, and I showed you exactly how to break it down, right down to the customer segment you are targeting. This is what we call knowing your numbers, understanding your unit economics. A lot of us are in business, but we don't necessarily know our numbers right down to the T. So we went through this exercise in terms of even mapping the different customer segments with the different opportunities. For example, in the context of fresh produce, we looked at this particular market, the restaurants and the hotels. We already identified the size of the market. And then we identified out of that big size of the market, what percentage market share do we want to capture? And this is obviously when you're doing projections, it's a little bit of a science and a little bit of an art. All right. It's a lot of guessing, obviously, but understanding the market, understanding who the competitors are, and how many things are on the shelf competing would then help you make a educated guess in terms of what percentage you'd like to hold in the market. So if it is a particular supermarket you're eyeing, you're trying to get your products in there, and you want, let's just say you're doing ice creams, and you want your line to be in there, but you realize they have like 20 varieties. So then you're like, okay, maybe if I have my variety in here and I have maybe 3 flavors in here, let me try and capture at least 3% of the market, so in terms of orders, etc. So anyway, this is obviously when you're dealing with revenues and you're planning for revenues, these are all projections, really. Obviously, once you have finished doing your projections, once you start making those sales and hitting those revenue goals, you can then say, oh, okay, you can use the canvas to compare what you had projected versus the reality and start to make adjustments. Some of us like to overestimate things and say, okay, I'm going to have like 100 sales and this and that. And then when the time comes, you only do 2. Well, at least you can use this as a dashboard to measure your performance, and you keep reviewing it. Some people would have, say, their model saved, and every time they make changes, they save it again under a new date. That way you can say, okay, you started out January of this year, and then in June, you're going to do a review to see what has changed. Because when you're in your business, especially agribusiness or any type of agro-processed type of business, things happen and things change very quickly. This is why the traditional business plan only gives you a snapshot of what the business is doing. The moment it is printed, the next day, I tell you, things have changed, and whatever is in that plan might not necessarily apply anymore. Things happen quickly. So as entrepreneurs, we really need to have a simple way of capturing the essence of our business, the essence of how we create value, which is what the business model canvas does. Clearly, it doesn't capture everything, because remember the activity we did? I had to go below here to jot down some ideas. I had to go below here to create a profile of the company that we're addressing, right? Even here, you can break it down to problem solving, etc. So it won't capture everything, but at least if you are explaining to someone or describing how your business generates value, how your business makes that money, this is the way to do it. The other important thing too is, as you would realize, we might be talking about numbers and financial literacy, but you can't have money if you don't know who it is paying you and who that customer is. Hold on. Out. Oh, you just come out here. My apologies. My dogs can be loud. So you cannot do a financial plan in a vacuum. It has to make sense. I've seen people give me financials and say, oh, these are the financials for my business. When I start to ask a question, I say, well, how come it's showing in June you have all these sales? What's happening in June? They can't tell me, but you ought to know now. Obviously, once this is just a start, but at least it's a good start for you to capture all the information that you need to break it out. Okay. Are you all with me so far? Any questions, any concerns? Anyone had a concern while we were working in this the last time? Ladies, hello.
Good so
Please
far,
do.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Okay, so that being said, we had started with this revenue stream. We at least identified it. I showed you how you can input. We inputted the customer segments and we actually created the market size. And here we had started inputting some, if not all, of the information. At least we did the dehydrated wholesale. And again, this helps to always kind of map what the value proposition, because always when you're selling to a client, it's always what's in it for them. So you have to always keep that at the top of your mind, even though it might not necessarily have a bearing directly on your numbers, but it adds in. So here you can see we had set our unit prices. So most of these items here were based on a unit because we're dealing with products. Now, how about, and we're looking at agritourism now, how about when we do something like farm visits? Anything, farm visits, and again, we have here farm experiences. This is how you can now innovate on your existing model. So not only did we diversify along products and along the commodity chain, so we moved from just the actual commodity to a lot of different value-added products, right? But we also added services, which I all encourage you to do. Start thinking outside of the box to what sort of service can you incorporate and models around services. Okay, there's some questions in there. Yes, you get a copy. I also shared a link so you can access this here where you can save. But at the end of the academy, you'll be getting all the presentations, PowerPoints, and everything. So you'll be able to download it. But right now you have access to the sheet to play around with. So that's fine. Hold on. One moment, I'm just gonna put the dogs out. 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so when it comes to services, it's very interesting because it gives you a lot of space for you to innovate and add new things. So I think this is one area I wanted us to have a conversation around before we get into some of the additional things or models around services. So over here, we had identified a few services, things like delivery, the farm visits, and by extension, farm experiences, but also farm experiences from an educational perspective. So one was farm visits, people coming to the farm and you incorporating agritourism with it. Then the other was farm experiences from creating educational or apprenticeship programs. Okay. Then someone even mentioned agro-processing as a service, meaning you've already invested in your agro processing, you have your little plant, you've done your HACCP, you've done all these things for your unit. But now you might have other people that want to maybe do a similar product, if not the same, but they want it on their own label. So that's one way of doing it and issuing a license. You tried to download it, but you had issues. Okay, one moment, let me see. You should not have issues. Yep. You should be able to print it and download it. So anyway, you'll get an attachment, I think, when they send the final one. You'll get links and attachments as well. So let's have a conversation around the services and have a conversation around the types of revenue models. So what I mean by with products, you price per unit, but with services, you have more flexibility. You can either price your service as a subscription model or as a monthly flat fee and so on. So let's have a conversation around that and come up with some ideas specifically to this best frozen fruits. That's around the services. Who wants to start? Carassa? Bellas? Mariah Noel? Remember, this is an interactive session, huh? So it's not me talking alone. Abina? Okay,
Miss Telly, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sabina, okay.
Yes.
I said, let's have a conversation around the services components, and I'm gonna highlight it in red. The services component that we discussed before for this particular model. And let's just have a discussion as to the type of revenue models you can come up with. Because when we're dealing with products, you're dealing with unit sales. But when you're dealing with services, you can have many, many different types of revenue models.
Okay, so for delivery, I'm thinking a price per kilometer. And for, is it some culinary something like a class, a demo, have it per hour, probably 200 an
It was
hour.
me. Okay.
Per kilometer? And what?
Okay.
Per hour?
Who jumped
Yes,
me there?
per hour.
Who's speaking?
Me?
No, there's someone else that has their mic on.
I was speaking and then I stopped because somebody took over. That's fine. That's
Oh,
fine. Go ahead.
okay, no problem. Well, no, you can both be on. It just. Okay, someone says per hour, per kilometer. Any other ideas?
What do you say? Like a subscription.
Okay,
You can
subscription.
subscribe.
Okay. For which one?
A service.
The what?
A service.
The service, yeah.
Yes.
Even the products, you can have some.
Yes. Well, yes.
Mhm.
For farm visits, to make it attractive, you probably have a price for locals and a price for tourists.
Okay, but is it like per tour or what is it?
Per tour, yes, per tour.
Okay. And you can differentiate your pricing, very good. According to your segments, good.
Yes.
Per tour, someone said subscription boxes, so which one will be a subscription box? Or which service you said subscription? Anybody?
Can we say like, let us subscribe for getting maybe information on the herbs, or let's say, yes, so many herbs, you have your herbs and getting information. So you subscribe for that information to make different maybe products with the herbs, or you can pay a certain fee for that. No?
Oh, okay, very good idea. Let me add a row here. Okay. So let's put that under the culinary. So you have maybe like a newsletter.
Yes.
Hello.
That's the
Yeah,
way.
you mean, do you mean nutritional facts?
Is it nutritional facts or the information?
It could be both though. Information and nutritional facts as well.
Nutritional recipes.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, it's all about creating your own recipes or having a video, or having videos made, and people could subscribe to all these different
Oh,
things
so
available.
let me put media. So it could be newsletter. It could be a network, even a membership, right? Membership. And you can have content. Yeah. That's all very, very valid. And that's like a monthly subscription, quarterly subscription. What is it?
Monthly.
It all depends on how often something is
market.
renewed. You need to keep something a little spice so that people will have a subscription monthly. So maybe it depends on anything refreshing that is placed in there, or you could give some wonderful packages, you know, quarterly.
Oh, that's true. You can incorporate even a subscription box even with it. It's true. So as you can see, okay, farm demos can actually be a service. So as you can see, so you can imagine, let's just say you're incorporating these farm experiences. Let's just assume you're doing the culinary experiences. Have you ever seen people incorporate like cooking, culinary experiences during
not
tours?
not really cooking, but if you were to go to Hotel Chocolat, then you have the experience of making your own chocolate.
Very
So
good. Now,
yes.
take Hotel Chocolat and take that concept. Can you see yourself modeling a similar concept with your products? Because let me tell you something, there is a trend, and since your topic is agritourism, there is a trend now. People are looking for authentic local experiences. And part of that is to eat local and to buy local. And if you were growing it, and you're showing them how to do a culinary experience around it, very similar to Hotel Chocolat. Hotel Chocolat has got the chocolate, the cocoa, right?
Yes.
But in that case, you can do it around anything. But people really travel far for those type of authentic
Like a
experiences.
cooking class or something, a cooking class.
Yes.
We have a hotel on island.
Bouillon making or something like that. Our local bouillon or saltfish pie or
Right.
something.
Good. And half of the products in there come from your farm if you're into farm.
Yes, all the local herbs and all the local seasoning peppers and
Exactly. And if you're into agro-processing, you're probably incorporating one of your products in that.
For example, Miss Agro Processing, you do the local treats. on a tour that you could show them how to, as long as you have a proper place, you could show them how to make a treat, which is one of your most simplest treats, or the process in which is being made before the end product comes out.
Right. And while you're doing that, you're incorporating, as during the class, you're sharing with them the history of the treats and, sharing the culture, essentially. If like making fudge in St. Lucia versus making fudge anywhere else, it's different. You have the opportunity to share some stories, some insights. So you're finding more and more people are leveraging content to really create experiences around their services. So the whole experience market is really huge. If you're combining experiences along with nutritional marketing, again, very powerful. The premiums you can get in terms of like the added value for your revenues is also extremely high. Let me
In
grab.
St. Lucia, we have this hotel, Body Holiday, where they do their own local farming, and what they do, they have the guest actually sign up, where they go through the farm, and towards the end of the tour, they get to prepare some special food using some of the produce that were picked along the way during the tour.
100%.
Right. So yeah. So maybe some of us can emulate that, use that to bring more revenue to the business.
Something like that. Like for example, you can look at perhaps, let's look at farm stays, right? If you have additional, say you have an additional room or whatever, guest room or whatever, that could be promoted. Obviously, there has to be certain standards, and I'm sure the Ministry of Tourism or Tourism Authority would have certain standards for the rooms to be in. But over here, for example, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the added advantage of having so many offshore med schools, vet schools. There are about 3 or 4 offshore universities. So traditionally, when people build a home, they always build an extra room or 2 to try and target students. But now more so, they're getting a diversity. Not only is it the students coming to stay there or maybe their families, but now they're starting to get a lot of stayovers, people who just want to experience the island, but want to stay, with a local coming to stay and book in these things. Some of them are maybe connected to Airbnb, but some actually create their own, website and promote that. So if you are incorporating farm stays, that's a possibility. And you can actually combine it. The other thing, if you're doing farm to table cooking class, that's a big trend now, farm to table. People definitely, as what we're saying, people want to be able to pick the fruit, pick the vegetable, see it grow, go through everything, and then now utilize that to make a dish. You understand? So people can pay a fee per class, and you can do a lot with that. So you can even be more creative. I don't know if you have paint and sip in St. Lucia. Anybody offer paint and sip services? This is like an experience where.
Yes, Miss, we do have it.
Few persons, yes.
Okay, so now just think of that model and how you would sort of replicate that, but maybe you're not into art, but you can do something either with the cooking or something, so it's a matter of opening, being creative, create a new idea. The bottom line is, how can you create an experience around what you're already doing? Because guess what? When you're creating experiences, the cost to curate the experience versus the cost for the actual product is very different. It's a lower cost for you to create an experience. Most of us know how to cook, right? It's just a matter of maybe finessing the area you're going to have them cook, or even if you don't have those resources, how about taking them back to our history where we used to cook in the yaba pots, and have the cooking outside, or even if it's a barbecue, something. But experiences can be something you can incorporate, and it does help you address and slowly incorporate agritourism as well. And one can actually combine the different services. So here I did a combination of farm to table cooking class with farm stay experience. Right? And
Since you're on
imagine,
the topic of sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Since you're on the topic of experience, what came to mind as you spoke? I remember this hotel that I used to work at. One of the things that they would do for any couple
Mhm,
that would get married at the resort, what they
mhm.
would do, they would have them plant a coconut tree.
There you go, something as simple like that.
Plant a coconut tree and have their names and the names dated on it. Well, names and the wedding date on it. And later on, they'll probably shift that coconut tree to another location or something. So when these people return to the hotel, what happens? They can visit that same tree. I don't know if they still do it, but that's one of the things
That's
that I know.
cool. Yeah.
There are another thing. There are persons who come and they don't even know what a coconut, what a coconut tree, not a coconut, what the coconut plant is. Because I
Yeah.
remember a guest walking up to me with the coconut in his hand, and he was like, "What was that?" So I told him that's how the coconut tree starts up and everything. And then I had him, probably dig up. I gave him the experience basically, digging up the hole himself. So I got the
Yeah.
tools for him, dig up
Yeah.
the hole, and had him plant that coconut tree.
I'm
And
sure
then
what an experience.
yes, and that same person, I did the same thing for him. I wrote his name next to it because it was in a different location, there was no coconut trees around. So when he came back, I was still working at that resort. So when he came back, he came to visit that same tree, and he's like, "Oh, so it's just creating memories for
Forget. Yeah.
for people, because a lot of us might think that when these people come, when these visitors come, they know what it is. Some of them, probably the experience for them might be drinking out of a coconut, an actual coconut, seeing how we cut the coconut. All
Yeah.
these little things are experiences to them.
Are definitely
That's
experience.
why they would probably compare it and say, because sometimes they might get coconut water in a tin, or they might get it in a bottle, but drinking it from the actual shell will taste different.
And even
So
an
all that.
experience with them climbing up the tree to go pick their own coconut. That's already an experience by itself.
Well, that one, that one, no
Well,
insurance.
that's got
that,
to
that one we need some high insurance.
high
So I'll leave that.
insurance.
I would leave that one out of it. Probably what we'll do, what can be done is probably we could just show them how it's done, or have somebody climb the tree.
Right.
All these little things that these people appreciate, and sometimes we take these things for granted when we come to the islands.
Yeah.
Persons come to the islands, and we often wonder, like, what is it? They come, yes, we live here, but what is it what makes them come back? It's our culture. It's the things that they see. They see things that sometimes we often take for granted, basically.
Yeah. Even things like, even as simple as a broom, right?
Or the broom making,
Broom
all
make
these things.
something
The
very,
the mats, the rugs, all these little things.
we take it for granted, but believe you, that is like good as gold. If you're incorporating experiences, you really have to think out of the box, leverage heavy on the culture, because a
Um,
lot take that for granted. Go ahead.
Ms. Tilly, just wondering, what are your thoughts? I may be thinking outside the house right now, but from an educational perspective, what do you think about partnering with the schools, the secondary schools, kids that are doing agriculture, depending on the farm that you have, to
Yeah.
have a more holistic appreciation of exactly what it is. So not necessarily by the hour, but let's say you look at vacation times, Christmas, Easter, especially summer. If you have the rooms available, have them really experience what it's like working on the farm. Sort of like an A to Z. So you're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing what you need to do. So you have a better appreciation as opposed to, yeah, it's all well and good to read the books, the agricultural books, but the actual experience on the farm. What do you think of something to that effect?
Yeah, that could work too. But bear in mind, it's time consuming. So everything got a cost, huh? You got the direct costs, you have the operating expenditures. So if you're going to do that, make sure maybe you have a dedicated person, a resource that you're allocating to help like go over it with them. So you might need
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be free.
okay, yeah, okay, fine. If it's part of your business model as part of those educational experiences, I agree 100%. It's practical. It's very
Right.
practical.
Right. So Miss, what are you saying? It would be something like a camp, some sort of a
Yeah,
camp?
like a working camp, yeah.
Like a working camp or an apprenticeship sort of thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But one of the things, because I'm a new agriculture teacher, and one of the things that kind of hurts my heart, it's like I don't see that where I teach, that these children are interested in agriculture. They don't really know that, like, they still have the mentality that this is just farming, this is just a farmer's job, but they don't look at or appreciate that there's so much more that they can do in terms of not just farming, but the agro processing, the sales, there's
Oh, no one
engineering.
really teaches agribusiness in school. This is the problem.
Yes.
It's isolated.
Veterinarians and all these things. So I just, because that's one of the topics I did give them today. I careers in agriculture. So there's training opportunities, there's employment opportunities.
They don't see
These
the benefit.
They need to do
yes.
the tours, the actual tours, to actually see maybe and feel, and I believe that's what it is with our St. Lucia. Maybe they need to actually go on the tours and see,
Yes.
run by the on the lawn, get a guava, maybe see the river thing, the stones, and maybe something like that. It's the only way I believe.
And see the entrepreneur behind that. See how they're running their business, how they're able to send people to school, how, people don't see it as a business. Some people, agriculture is a hobby. And if you treat it as a hobby, it will treat you as a hobby. But for others that are, commercially focused, it can be a very lucrative business, very lucrative indeed.
And I believe even taking the children to the markets to see the whole process of how it's done, and the buying and the selling the different. Because not too long ago, I think last month I was buying a papaya, and at the supermarket, a working lady, young lady, maybe in her early 20s, and she asked me what's the name of the fruits, and she's already working and she didn't know the name of the papaya.
Yeah.
So
there you go. There you go.
So maybe the experience of children coming to the market would be a good thing as well, so that they can do the different fruits, the different veggies, and the whole experience would be good.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I remember doing this tour at Safa. We did do a market day tour to go around and to see the different things. So it has been done. I don't know for now, but in my years we did it.
You need to do it at a younger age, where the children will develop the passion and the love for it, not at a soft age. I don't think.
Yes, miss. Yes, understand.
So yeah, that's when you're adding experiences, that could be considered. Just bear in mind when you're packaging it, obviously you need to understand the segments. Remember, we looked at our segments. Here you can see every segment, and I told you before, every segment, it's a different value proposition. So the old adage of, oh, I'm targeting everybody. Okay, you might be targeting almost everyone, but really and truly, when you break it down, you have to understand who your segment is, right? So here in this context for the cooking class, made it simple. Residents versus tourists or visitors. And even in that, you can break down the segments even to be more specific as to the likes. What these tourists, are they adventurers, or these are the more retired ones, etc., etc. Are you dealing with couples? You know, if you're dealing with couples, who do you need to partner? Do you need to partner with an event planner that does destination weddings, because that might drive business, and have her incorporate your package inside the destination package? You have to think out of the box here, so when you now identify your target segments, again, whatever new service you're adding is going to increase your cost, both direct and operating. When you're looking at the business model canvas, you only have the cost structure there, but obviously you have to break it down to what is direct and what will be your normal operating expenses, and break it down. So I find it very useful to kind of use it to just document what it is. So for example, in the case of culinary classes, some direct costs would be the ingredients. So obviously you would have designed your menu already. You have the ingredients. Then if you are the chef, you have your time, right, which you need to get paid. Then you have your direct utilities, your electricity, water, etc. And maybe you might have even your equipment. Could be direct, depending. Then you have the other key resources you might have that are more like fixed costs, things like the kitchen facilities, your cooking equipment, right? And then things that generally speaking, you have to replenish. It could be part of your direct cost, would be like fresh produce from the farm. And then of course you would need a marketing budget. However, you decide to do that marketing. Remember, how are you engaging the customer? How do you reach them? Are you using just pure social media? Are you using partnership? Are you using brochures? That needs to be budgeted. And if anything were to happen while they're cooking in your kitchen, do you have insurance to cover that? Okay. So once you have quantified and broken down all those costs, you definitely need to now look at, okay, so these are my costs. Then you work out the potential revenues you can get from each of these for the service. So you first look at what competition is doing, or even if you don't have direct competitors, you look for similar products. So you look at other industries that may have that sort of service, and you try and gauge how much they're pricing the services. Again, when it comes to pricing, I always do what is called an A and B test, meaning I would have 2 or 3 groups and set different prices, and just test your prices when you start to see which price would be most optimal. Sometimes you could test it with, say, a group of clients or early providers, or you can do a survey to see, kind of guess what price they're willing to pay for a particular service. Once you have done that and you set your prices, just make sure Your prices can cover for all your direct costs, especially your direct costs, like your time and everything. So sometimes people, when it comes to pricing, there's so many different pricing strategies. I could share that in a handout, the different types of pricing strategies, but mostly you want to have your costs covered and then you have your markup. Yeah, in some cases, especially when you're dealing with culinary cooking and say you're dealing with visitors, international visitors, you may even position it as a premium. So it's not just your cost and a markup, but it could even be a premium price. If you put the cost and a markup that's maybe a 20–30%, you might be charging them maybe a little $50 per class, right? But because you're offering a premium service, say you're cooking something traditional, bouillon and all kind of stuff in there, you want to charge a little $100 US, whatever for the class. That's called a premium pricing. So I'll share pricing strategies later. I don't think we have enough time to cover all the types of pricing strategies, but you'll get it as a handout. Okay. So what I do want you to do though, once you have decided around, I just use these examples here so you can see how they play out and how you can work through when you're developing your ideas, work through the different elements. What I do want is under key activities for you to focus and craft a plan. So if it is, you're going to have, it could be one experience, it could be 2, 3, 4. Try not to do too many because you need to focus. So no more than 3 services, experiences, and so on. I would like you to kind of create your activity plan and very simple, keep it simple. I need you set out what you want to do. So in this case, say you want to establish a cooking class program or a culinary program, and you set out what the goal is. So what you will be doing, okay? And what will be your objective of this class? So the objective is going to tie into your marketing budget, etc., or tie into some of the activity, either operations, etc. And obviously there might be a budget linked to it or not. If it is, and then you have to identify which action. If you know you don't necessarily have what it takes to handle it, but you have worked out your budget, you've identified that if you hire a chef, even if your chef is going to cost you X amount to do this, if you hire somebody, you can leverage and have maybe in a space of a month, if you can get through with all those tourism calls, all those cruise ship calls, etc., and you can do at least 100 classes, it will pay for the chef. So everything has to be coordinated and planned. There's nothing wrong with that. For the young lady who said about the educational program, here, look at the action. Hire a chef, develop a curriculum, set a schedule, and begin marketing the class. I think the same would apply in your case, right? If it's farm stay experiences, obviously there's a lot more that you have to think about to go into that. And it will be obviously much more costly, but if you have designed, ideally for farm stay experience, me personally, because of all the gap requirements for farms, etc., and having people walk up and down, it might not necessarily be ideal to have the accommodation in the farm itself. But if it's not too far from the farm, or the farm is, kind of close by, then it might work. So if it is that you have incorporated, say, additional rooms into your house where you have a little guest house or you have a guest room and the farm is not too far, just make sure you work out the logistics with the trip, etc., and incorporate it. So it is possible to be living a little from your farm, but you can incorporate it. Also, make sure you remember all the health and safety standards. Make sure when you're bringing someone on there, they have to use their, their PPE gear, face mask, the hats, etc. So you don't want any contamination, etc. And you make sure you have the price for your PPE. So budgeting, ladies, is something you're going to have to do for every new activity you're planning. So think of it as a project. If you're creating a new service, you're creating a new product that you want to layer on, you still have to treat it as a project and pretty much cost out every single thing, right down to the PPE gear. A lot of times we don't write things down and document everything, and the next thing you know, you're taking out of your own personal money to buy the PPE. Why should you be doing that? So the key thing is when you are dealing with anything agri-tourism related, you have to also think about care for the other people. So you're dealing with things like I mentioned before, there might be an activity where you might have to make sure you have certain type of insurance, because if something were to happen, you might be exposed, right? So this is where you would now shop around, ask the insurance people to give you quotations, and you would see they have either errors and emission insurance, especially when you're providing a service. There might be an insurance related to specifically for visitors. And sometimes the insurance cost, don't let the cost phase you, because you can incorporate it into your package. So you'll be surprised. Sometimes these insurance costs might be some like $20 or $30 per person. So just add that into your costing, but make sure it is part and parcel and it has been covered so you're not exposed. Marketing is always a big one. A lot of us don't ever price for marketing. So you have to think very carefully, how exactly are you reaching these people? It could be through partnerships where you don't necessarily require that much of a marketing budget. But if you have to now do, maybe share an ad with someone else. If someone says, oh, do an ad in the newspaper or wherever, you first have to investigate to see if the people you're targeting really read that. And if so, does it make sense using all your money, or is it that there are other people going to be advertising that you could share the cost? So these are certain decisions you have to make. And like the other one, for anything, create a plan. So identify what the plan is. You set your goal specifically. Every goal will be specific to you, but make the goal realistic, okay? So in this one, I have a goal of provide a peaceful and educational farm experience to the guests. So that is the goal of the whole service and experience I want to create. And then in this context, I'm attracting couples and families. So remember what I said, your segment would determine the packaging. So don't let anybody fool you. Once you have a different target group, you're going to have a different experience and flow. Okay, so in this context, I'm targeting couples, I'm targeting families for the stays. So this way, I know how to craft my messaging. Even if I'm going to put out an ad, my ad is going to be tailored for these couples and so on. And maybe if I want to add a couple that is health conscious and so on, so then you can have that nutritional marketing slipping in there. Okay. And then what is my action? Prepare the accommodation facility, decide on whatever additional service, and begin marketing the farm stay experience. This is high level. Obviously, if you were to break it down I'm sure there's so many other things you have to have prepared. But the whole point is you need to document your actions and you can put it step by step and then you can start crossing it. Because if you don't do that, this plan is just going to stay what it is on paper and you're not going to execute. So you need to be able to execute. Hence why, boy, where is it? Oh. Oh. Okay. 1 second. Where is my sheet? Okay, found it. Okay. So this is why it is really important for you to kind of complete, because here you see key activities. I'm sure you're wondering how you document that. The key activities are actually going to be changing. So if I were to share my own business model canvas, for me, because of the different activities, I kind of update my activities every month. So I will put in the high level activities I need to get done. And at the end of the month, I kind of check it off and I add more activities. So for me, it's an ongoing thing. It might not capture everything, but it captures the most important thing for me to execute. And once I've executed on it, I'm now looking at another element of it. All right. Any questions? Yes? Hello?
Yes, are you hearing me?
You sound far, far, far away. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm saying Michaela Bradford had her hand up for a while.
Okay. Michaela, go ahead.
Oh, that was a while back. I think what I was going to ask was about promotions. If like you're having a promotion,
Mhm.
would that be okay to have it within that agribusiness? For instance, if you're saying that let us have a buy one get one free of local wines or cheesecakes or something like that. Buy one and you get another one free, or a wine tasting promotion. So you have the local wines and you want your maybe the tourists to actually taste it before you. Yeah.
Yeah, you could do that. And while you're doing that, you're actually capturing data, information.
Right.
First,
Yes.
yeah. And what they think. You always, any opportunity for you to get customer feedback, take it. Any opportunity. So if you're doing a wine tasting and part of your experience, always ask, them to give you feedback. Be it informally or formally. It's always important because that with that feedback, you're able to improve on your service.
Yes. Thanks for that.
Okay. So it's on the hour. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then I'm going to drop you right back into a spreadsheet and numbers. If you have any questions, let me know when we come back. So can you time me? It's 7:10. We should be back at 7:15. Stretch your legs, drink water, but do come back. Okay, we should be wrapping up. Awesome. So, Mary asked me a question. We did for services. What about products? Okay. Let me go back to that. I was just creating a cash flow statement. One moment. Okay, so the questions she said is, she asked about products. So I believe we covered product in the very last session we had, but I can go over product quickly. I think, 1 second, let me share my screen. Okay. So we went over products last time, and here we identified quite a few products. So the thing with products is most of the time you're selling the product per unit. Okay. So for instance, let's see here. Let's look at this one, for instance. This is based on the calculated inputs, all right. So let's look at this product here. Let's look at, here's one. Let's look at the dehydrated fruit snack packs. No. Right. So the snack packs. So we have, this is the total number of supermarket and grocers. This is the total number of schools, etc. Fine. So we want to capture here. Let's just say, ignore this one. Let's just say we're looking at selling them retail, okay? And we want to capture restaurants. Although retail restaurants, maybe not. So let's look at the groceries. So let's just say 0 for this. Let's just assume you have this amount of groceries. Anyway, we said 20. Let's look at 20. So we have about 20 groceries in St. Lucia that you want to distribute, and you want to distribute to at least, let's say, 10% of that. So at least 2, okay? And schools will be your highest, so you want to try and get into 20 schools, 21 schools, okay? Fair enough? So let us set unit prices. How much are we selling the snacks for? This is like your trailer mix. How much per packet?
$4 a packet.
Yeah, $4. Change this to $4 too. Okay. And how many purchases do you think we can sell to the supermarket on a monthly basis?
36.
36. And that's per month, correct? So there you go. So in a
How
month,
many packets in the case? How many packets in the case?
oh, good. That's a good question. How many packets in a case? So is this 1 case or 36 cases? That's a good question.
Okay.
Let's just say it's 12.
I doesn't.
If it's 12 in a box and it's basically one case, right?
And you have to watch the sizes also.
Yeah, it could be a size, but we're just running a scenario. So here we have calculated how much per month on a monthly basis. And by 12 months, this is how much.
Excuse me, let me ask a question. The
Yes.
price is per unit?
It's a per unit cost. Normally, when you're selling a product, it's per unit. Mhm. So it's just assumed the cost is per unit, unless you're doing something uniquely different and you're doing it per weight or something. And then you can cost it per pound or whatever, but generally speaking, you can do it per unit. So normally, that's why a lot of people who now sell, if you're looking at produce and selling produce, if you notice, when you sell your produce per weight, you actually generate more than just per unit, right? Because with weight, it gives you more leverage. The heavier your pumpkin is, the more money you're going to get. So that's one of the tricks of the trade. Just make sure if you're doing it per weight, you have all the necessary, what you call it, equipment. You have all the necessary weights, etc. And you have to make sure if you're going to do it by weight too, that your scale is verified by the Bureau of Standards. They normally check on these things. Because sometimes some scales can be off the rails and then it could cheat people. So that's consumer protection for you. But generally per unit, but then you can, again, this is all about you, your needs, your market. You can repackage them. You can create the different packages and create either a new type of package per unit, or you can do it per weight, right? The whole point of us is to try and move from just the commodity itself to some more value added. And with value addition, you can now fetch better pricing because of packaging and the whole shebang, the whole branding and packaging can add to it. But here you can see, if you're only targeting just say the two, and they're doing 48, maybe just one case, right? 48 per month, so on. If you want to just work it out per the whole case, the price of the case, that might even be better, right? In terms of calculations, it'll be better. So that's like 192 for a carton. And let's just say you're selling 5 cartons a month. 10 cartons a month. You see why I say the potential for agribusiness is very lucrative, but a lot of us are not watching the numbers. And also, this is just the revenues. It could be, it looks extremely lucrative on the revenues, and a business can be bringing in strong revenues. But when you now look at the costs of how much you have to pay, let's just say you had to import a lot of those dried fruits, and you now have to pay 3/4 of that amount goes out for paying customs and all of that. It goes back. After a while, you're just barely breaking even to your business. It's just existing, but it's not growing, nor are you really making a profit. This is why in some cases, I tell people, normally it would take you about 5 to 6 years when you're just starting out for you to even get to the point of making a profit. One will say, how come? The business could be generating strong revenues, but it doesn't mean that your cost structure is healthy. So this is where other decisions come in, where to cut costs, where to optimize, where you have to invest so that you can increase your output, et cetera, et cetera. And this is why, as a low-cost way, you can now think about what type of services you can now create. That's a low-cost way of increasing your revenue. Because a lot of times there's not much more that we can do with our products, right? With our inputs. Sometimes these inputs are fixed and sometimes we have to rely on what's happening in the global market because of the high costs and maybe the supply chain issues, the war in Ukraine, etc. It's causing all these shipping delays, etc. Maybe for what you're producing, you cannot help it. So what can you do? You have to now think out of the box, come up with a new solution, a new service, diversify your model, and bootstrap, similar to what Anna did, if you remember. She does a lot of bootstrapping, meaning you're using your own ideation, your own resources to actually generate that revenue for you to put back into your business. So she did that by also creating a line that just dealt with cakes and catering and so on. So a lot of us do all these type of split things just to make ends meet when we can't necessarily get funds that we want all at once. You have to get creative. Does this answer your question, Mary?
Yes, you did.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Perfect. So now I'm going to jump into cash flow. Now I know I did I went through it like really, really fast, but it is the lifeblood and I'm going to go over it a little slower, okay? Let's go to slideshow. I must have missed it. Hold on. Am I sharing my slides? No. I may have pulled up the incorrect slide, but anyways, same information, different branding. Just to show you how Helen's Daughters has evolved since. So ignore the branding, that's the old logo. Let's put this here. Okay, so I did mention the importance of cash flow. And what is cash flow? Cash flow is the measure of what's coming into your business and what's going out. There's a difference between what comes in, what comes out. As I just mentioned now, you can have a business bringing in strong cash flows. We're talking 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, very good. On the books, your revenues look great. This is why sometimes when people ask for financials, they want to see all the different types of sheets, not just your income statement. Because your income statement or the balance sheet will only just show the revenues coming in and then maybe the direct costs taken out and what your balance, which is called the gross margin. It is one indicator that the business is actually generating something. It is one indicator that shows that you are actually meeting the mark in terms of the customers. If you get to the point where you are constantly able to sell, turn over, that is fantastic. It means your product, you have that relationship in the market, a very good foothold, and you have a product that's moving. So now the key question is it profitable or not? And one of the things you can see, because I could be in the same business as Marcia, as Philippa, as Anjanella, all of us in the same business, exactly the same. We probably even start out with the same amount of money, okay? But because my business model is different from theirs, maybe I am able to capture more cash flow than the other person. So this is why one statement of revenues, it only gives you an idea of what some aspect of the business is doing, mainly on the, if you look at the business model side, mainly on the customer segments, the fact that you are really in touch with your market, that you're able to sell so frequently, but I need to be able to see what's going on under the hood further, hence why you have other sheets as part of your finance. You have your balance sheet, you have your profit and loss. So the balance sheet will tell you exactly what's going on. So it is cash flow. They say cash is king. Eh? Cash is king, and they really should be cash flow is king, because some business fail because of lack of cash flow. Let's look at what happened recently in the last month or so in March with those banks that went down. Apparently they didn't go down because they didn't have zero cash. They had cash, but their cash flow management was extremely poor. And there's some businesses that would have the resources, would have the building, but if you do not have the cash outlay on time when you need it to pay certain commitments, then your business runs the risk of going under. For example, if you're leasing the farm, or say you're leasing your agribusiness plant or something like that, you're paying a lease. If your cash flow management is poor, you might not be able to pay on time, and next thing they want to evict you and you lose it. So that runs the risk. And as I mentioned in the last session, certain things you can do can impact on it. If you're the kind of person who loves to give almost everything you do on credit, and it could just be, let's just use an example. It could just be you have, you decided, okay, you're going to be dealing with supermarkets and restaurants, etc. Now, these businesses also do certain things to manage their cash flow. So when they're engaging with vendors to provide produce, products, etc., they would try and work out 30 to 60-day payment terms. That is normal. And sometimes you have to try and negotiate the payment terms to be less than 30 days, maybe if it's 2 weeks or so on. But let's just assume all your clients, this is why I talk about diversification, all your clientele are supermarkets and restaurants, and all of them give you credit terms, 30 to 60 days, okay? And on top of that, let's just assume you are in you're doing horticulture, so you have a lot of fresh vegetables and so on, but you also, who was doing tree crops? You probably have like a couple tree crops in there, and you have some other, maybe like root crops as well growing. Each of your products, now this is for those of you who are farmers, bear in mind the crops you are growing have got their own life cycle. From the time you put the seed to the germination to harvesting, it could range between 3 weeks to 6 months. So you also have to, for those of you in farming, have to now plan out, do some extra planning in terms of your product diversification as well. I do like herbs, spices, and I do like horticulture incorporated into root crops. While root crops are very essential and they're good in times of like climate crisis, drought, and so on, they're a very good crop. You will not lose because they're underground. Okay, so this is where your sustainable agriculture practice comes in. And tying that with an investment decision. But also you cannot keep all of them under that because it might take 6 months, 5 to 6 months, depending on each crop profile. And of course, you have to factor in percentages for loss, etc., etc. So I do like horticulture. I do like opportunities where you can have covered agriculture, be it lower cost shade housing to more expensive covered greenhousing if possible, because that means you are reducing your risk of losing your crops, and you're ensuring you have the product almost year round, like tomatoes, etc., etc. So that's something you want to think about when you're thinking about investment decisions on what to go in. Now that you have got that your outlay and you have all these diversified practices, and hence why I talk about services as well, diversifying using services. It's in order to bring in that cash flow money in on time. If you have, say, a farm box, you do subscription boxes, and you have maybe about 20, 30 membership subscriptions that you're delivering boxes every week or every 2 weeks. They're paying you the money up front, huh? Whether they're paying you monthly or they're paying you quarterly, you have that cash flow coming in, even though you still have to make those deliveries throughout the quarter if you're receiving quarterly. So there are some cash management strategies there. So understanding INV stands for inventory. For those of you who are doing processing and also a lot of inputs, using a lot of inputs, and you have a lot of inventory that you need to sell, you have to manage that very closely. And again, if you're doing agro-processing, you have to be very careful because of what you're ordering, when they're going to expire, etc. AR stands for annual revenue. So you look at what your inventory is, and you also look at what your average annual revenue or average revenue can be. And then I told you before, cash income revenue is not profit. I think we all understand this. Do we agree? Yes? Let me see a yes in the chat or no. Yes, Abina, I'll get you a copy of the Excel. Okay. Yes, we all agree, right? So just because you're showing me a bank statement showing me, oh, you made X amount in a few months. I want to know, basically, I would like to see how your expenditure is going as well. Okay, correct. So we understand this concept. Very good. And I did show you an example of cash flow versus profits, where you have the cash comes in and goes out of the business. And you know, when someone asks you for financials, even though you're having the money coming in and out, one of the things that's important is to make sure when you are separating your personal with your financial, so even if you have to then go register the enterprise and open a bank account in it, it's okay if the cash comes in, okay, you deposit it into your account and you have to take it back out. The most important thing is that behavior is showing the bank that something is coming through. So it doesn't matter if it goes out. So don't be afraid if you have to show someone the financials and all they're seeing is all this flow. It means your business, something is happening. You have the cash in, cash out, right? Happening. So here you have someone who has an annual sale of 100,000. And when you take out all the expenses for the year, so this is assuming they spent 60,000 for a particular year. And they also spent 40,000 as an capital cost to buy a piece of machinery. They got zero in the bank. So if something were to happen the next day, you know, we always have some kind of, every day there's some new need. This business is going to be at risk because there's nothing in the bank at all. It means you have to dip into savings, assuming this entity actually has savings. And then when we talk about equipment, this is another example. Remember, even though you might not be spending on equipment, you still have to take out depreciation, which goes into another account, okay? Just to accommodate for when you have to replace it. So people want tractors, they want all sorts of fancy equipment, but nobody is actually taking out, even though on the financial spreadsheet, it is documented. So just bear that in mind. Okay. So here, really quickly, plan to purchase new assets at the start of the year, not at the end, and only spend cash on capital items if you have cash surplus. If you got zero in the bank, there is no need for you to be making any decisions on doing what we call a capital expenditure, buying a new asset. Okay, remember assets, liabilities, assets work for you, make money for you. Buying a new asset when you are cash negative and you don't have that extra cash is a bad decision because things could happen in a business in a blink of an eye, and you do need that cash to pay something, some bill, something. Right. They say unless it's a great bargain and if you have the cash, but don't buy large amounts of inventory. Inventory is another big one, especially coming close to Carnival, Christmas. Sometimes we love to stock up, but you have to manage it and know exactly how much. So you don't want to buy so much that you're stuck with it, and next thing, the only time you can offload this is next Carnival the next year. So those are things you want to think. And then also when you're buying inventory, you should do it on consignment. You only pay for it when you sell it, if possible. Of course, in agribusiness, it might be challenging because a lot of us would be buying the inputs, the seeds, etc. And these are actual inputs. So it's not very easy to buy on consignment. But where you can, buy on consignment. But there's also that conversation to have to make that decision when to lease and when to buy an asset. While building getting assets is very important, there's sometimes it might be better to lease. If, say, government is giving you land at a very knock-off price, like 200 EC a year, by all means lease and try and make that lease 10, 15 years. This way, you then set up a plan, make the money you need, and then buy whatever you need. Buy another asset that you can put to work. So understand how and when to do that. Okay. And then you have to separate your personal with your business, because a lot of us would tend to draw a lot from the business during the year and then not leave much for ourselves. So very important. And I also shared with you the cash flow conversion cycle. Let's see, someone is saying something. Okay, Gemma says she understands. Good. So when we're dealing with cash, you do remember the toilet. You remember that toilet water tank with the whole cash thing for money coming in? So I did tell you there's three key ways you can get money in. One is through investments, okay? Another is through operating activities. And the third is through financing. That's like getting a loan. That's okay. So here is a cash flow conversion cycle where you have, if we were to start with the sales at the very bottom here, you can see here is a trigger where you basically need to focus on generating sales, be it cash, minimize the credit unless you really have to. And where you're giving credit, you have to really manage. So you can't do 70% credit. No, that won't work. 20% if you're giving things on credit to be paid later. So you have to manage that. Where you have credit, you need to set up a process and a system for collections. Some of us are very, very, what's the word? We're very nurturing. Remember when we did our first session, we're nurturers. So because we're nurturers, we don't know how to ask for money. And we don't know how to follow up for money. So when someone is owing us, we just leave it there. From time to time, you may give them a little ring. Hi, I'm following up for the 500 EC you have for me. Oh, no. Remember, if you don't collect your cash, and if you have that behavior and it starts to pile up, you're going to be out of business in no time. So if you know yourself, you don't have the capacity to do it, you need to identify a friend, an entity, a partner. You can even hire them to go after account receivables. If it's after, you have to set up a process, obviously. Just because you go to business X and they're supposed to pay you your invoice of 500 and they haven't done it in 30 days, you're not going to immediately trigger the bailiff for them. You obviously have a process. Maybe after 100 days or 90 days or 2 months, that you have escalated. One is a soft letter reminder. You've done 3 reminders. You've done a call. You've done a site visit. You now had to send someone else to do a reminder. And if all of that has not worked and you escalate, at that point in time, it'd be good if you hire somebody. And they have people who are willing to offer bailiff services, and sometimes they don't charge you upfront. They charge when they're collecting. They probably might take a percentage of how much it is they're collecting for you, and they charge the person they're collecting from. So that's an option, but it's very important. A lot of us don't pay attention until it's too late because we don't want to deal with this, too stressful. So don't be stressed. You know, this is your business. You have to handle it. Same, you have certain commitments and account payables you have to pay. You need to try and plan it so you can pay them on time. So you're not always writing letter explaining yourself, asking for extension, etc. But in a time of crisis, obviously you have to get into that mode. It's a way of cash flow management. And then of course, you know when it's easier if you can purchase your inputs for credit as opposed to cash all the time. It frees up your cash flow. So these are the considerations. Okay. Everyone here with me? Yes, type yes.
Yes, we are.
Good. So now let me go into the cash flow. Yeah. Oops, I'm going too fast. Too fast. Okay, so I mentioned, I already talked about our working capital. And our working capital consists of 3 things: inventory, account receivable, account payable. For those of us who are doing product, whether it is you are a farmer or you have manufacturing going on with your agro-process, we always have some inventory. So inventory management is very, very important. For those persons who are now maybe want to dip your toe, you haven't started yet, you want to dip your toe by creating some agriculture service, you might not necessarily have inventory per se, right? You would have content, but not inventory. So your only focus is you paying your bills and you making sure you receive those bill payments if you're giving them credit, account receivables, being on top of it. If you put in a policy where you're saying no credit whatsoever, and you know, like if you're going to a farmer's market, in a farmer's market, without even you putting a policy, it's cash on demand. You want this product, you give me cash, I collect it. So you have to now decide on the different venues. If you're going to participate in pop-up shops, in farmers markets and so on, and you say maybe 70% of the business will be in that, and then, but still, you still want to have the business to business type of experience where you're targeting a hotel, you're targeting a restaurant and so on. You have to know how to navigate that and manage that. Yeah. So we understand the working capital. So sometimes when you go to find out to try and get financing, and they might tell you, oh, they only give money for working capital, meaning it's only for this and not for capital expenses. So if it is you wanted to bring in, let's just say a greenhouse is what we will consider a big capital expenditure. Okay, that's an asset that can generate something, or you're going into, you want to get solar to now, because obviously your electricity bills, Lucy is driving you crazy with these huge bills. So if you were to now implement this solar panel and you become self-sustainable, or at least use it during the day, etc., and reduce your bill, this can do that. But that is another capital expenditure, which is a big cost in the beginning, but you're going to make it back through your savings. So in some cases, if they tell you working capital, understand what they're talking about. It's only account receivable, account payable, inventory. Sometimes people have maybe a lot of account receivables because they have all these contracts with hotels and so on, 60, 120 days. So they need to go to the bank and say, listen, I have my contracts, okay? Like even myself, when I do some consulting, sometimes I have some really good looking contracts, but I'm only paid for performance. So sometimes I have these contracts, but the time before I get paid is long. So sometimes I might go to get some financing so where I can get funds up front to cover me for that period of time. So this is some consideration here. So I mentioned a process. Here is an example of how you can structure a process. Again, these days we have lots of lovely apps that you can use, where as soon as you made a sale, you press a button and push, the invoice goes to the person, and maybe in your invoice you already state the terms that are agreed, whether it's a 7-day payment, immediate payment, 30-day payment, depending on the context you put it in. And right there on the road, you can make your sale right there. So now the question is, how are you getting those payments? Is it that they're paying you cash? If you have a fancy integration where you can get mobile payments or whatever payments, acceptance of cards fast tracks that process. It means you can receive payments faster. Once you have your process in place, then you can now see where your working capital funding gap is. Okay. Based on your inventory. So you're gonna get that. So let's have that conversation with, generally speaking, managing your cash flow before we wrap up this evening. Very important, timing of the cash flow and impact on your bank balance. Those two. So if you don't have an account set up for the business, please, after we finish, that's the first thing you're gonna do. Register what you have to register. Don't be afraid of anything. As a matter of fact, when it comes to agribusiness and agro-processing, when it comes to taxes and stuff, mostly we tend to go tax-free. There are a lot of benefits to registering. You can access a lot of things. So if you haven't done it, maybe, you're tired or lazy or whatever, use the information you got in your previous class, go ahead and do it, and then proceed to open an account. We did mention options for accounts too. We also mentioned, I did check it out, and yes, the credit union seems to be a much friendlier institution. So if I were you, I would have maybe a normal operating account at the bank and another account at the credit union and so on. So this is key. We know profit and cash are different. And cash, this is not, and you have to understand what cash is not yours. So once you have cash coming in, your income, obviously you have some direct expenditures, so not all that money is yours. So you can't just say, oh, I made a sale. You know how some people do? They sell a product and then someone asks them, family member, oh, mommy, can I have money for this? And all that money goes. But you haven't deducted anything, so you have to watch it. That cash is not yours. You have to do all your deductions before you can see what actually is left for the business. We talked about working capital management, very important. And then, of course, funding the growth of your business. And one of the ways we can fund the growth is by, quote unquote, bootstrapping, meaning by your own creative ideas, incorporating new services without necessarily going external before you actually then maybe tap into, say, a credit union and so on. There are 4 fundamental key questions one needs to ask. Am I trading profitably? Have I put enough aside to meet my regular financial commitments? And these regular commitments, in some cases, if you have to register as a, let me see. Hold on 1 minute. One second. Okay. Apologies, that was just an urgent message. So financial commitments, depending on how large you get, the bigger your business, once your business gets to like the Barron Foods level, obviously you'll need to like register for things like VAT, etc. So there's some times you may have to put aside monies for those commitments like that, etc. But if it is like you probably are servicing a loan or something like that, you still need to put aside the money for the interest, etc. You then need to ask the question, does my business have enough to spend on myself and pay for others? A lot of times when you ask that critical question, when it comes to spending on yourself, the answer is no. And a lot of us do not take the time to actually craft out a salary, no matter how small, even though you're the founder. Is my business getting ahead or falling behind? Those are the 4 questions you need to ask as you're going through it. I had introduced this cash flow management framework, which puts these 4 questions into it, because the 4 questions, first one deals with profitability. The other one deals with provisioning. Are you putting aside enough money for your commitments? How are you provisioning? Liquidity is very key and this is really fundamental. A lot of us, if you can't pay yourself, pay your staff, pay a lot of services, you can't be in business. So this is something we need to measure for. And then of course, are you meeting the goals you set out for? So I did share with you very high level, the cash flow canvas. And you are going to get a copy of the cash flow canvas. It's really, this is what it looks like. And the unique thing about it, just like the business model canvas, you can create a cash flow canvas that is used for your review. So you can do it at the end of the year and do like a total summary for the whole year, right? And then you can also use it for planning. So let's just say end of the year planning, you plan out for the whole year. And then you can also do a forecast. And then of course you can create one that is like to track. So you can also do it like a monthly or quarterly. So there's an option for you to tick what view you're looking at. And it's really just capturing your cash flow. Money in, money out. So this is why you have your opening balance. So let's just say we started off with a bank account and we have 2,000 EC in the account. And then based on the activities, remember you're selling, you're this, you're that, you have other services. You can identify the different flows and you have cash coming in. GST, this cash flow canvas was initially created in Australia. So over there, they have gross sales tax. In our context, it's VAT. If VAT is 0, you're not paying VAT, so you don't have to exclude VAT, basically. But then sometimes it's important because a lot of us who are importing inputs and importing products for our agro-processing, sometimes we might need some materials. We have to pay VAT, so it's also important to track it there. So I would just replace the verbiage with VAT, and you can track it and subtract it. A lot of times we're paying for it, and it adds up, and we're not necessarily seeing where all money is going. And then, of course, cash out every time you have to expend, whether it's on your direct costs, your operating expenses, you're paying salaries, you're paying utilities, you need to subtract it. If you're paying VAT, you do that. A lot of us have to pay our own income tax. So there's a little bit of a withholding there. In St. Kitts, we don't pay income tax. In St. Lucia and St. Vincent, we have to pay certain income tax. And if you have to check with national security. Yeah, check with national security, because sometimes you can be an independent contributor as an entrepreneur for paying Social Security. And if there are any other payments you have to pay. Then whatever is, if you have a surplus, then it shows you the surplus and you can tell that you're actually paying, you're actually generating a cash surplus. And in some cases, thank God we're in agribusiness, because trust me, the income company tax in St. Lucia is very high. I think it's over 33%. So it's a good thing agribusiness is tax exempt. So you can put a nice big 0 in that. You don't need to deduct that, thank God, for that concession there. And then, of course, you now need to identify how much you have available left to spend. Okay, so this is one way of capturing it in a very simple way. A lot of times when I'm working with some entrepreneurs, they have difficulties with the whole spreadsheet. So I find taking them into a more visual process is much easier than using a spreadsheet. And after they've gone through this process, they are more receptive to the spreadsheet. Okay, so let me just take you to an example. Oops. Oh, here you are. Okay, from yes. I realize the time. I'm just going to showcase an example. So in this context, two things were done. One, he had created a canvas, a review canvas and a forecast canvas. And there is another sheet there. Because we had already done that personal income statement, understanding how this personal income statement plays out here is easy. So when I provide this for you to do your data entry, it is going to be much easier for you when you're adding in the available cash spend, etc. So here we can look at this case study. This gentleman has an opening balance of $1,523. He generated a total amount of sales for 117. Okay, Anya, thank you very much. We're about to wrap up anyway. 117,000. He received government subsidies. So some people might receive like a subsidy or some special grant or whatever. You can call it a government grant or subsidy, whatever. So the total amount, and then out of that, he had to pay 1,436 over the whole year in VAT, equivalent of VAT. So then total excluding what he had to pay for VAT is 114,000. Okay. So that's money coming into the business. So this is for a whole year. This is a yearly, not a weekly view. So then when you're looking at cash out, what did he have to pay? He had to pay wages. He had running costs for the car. Some of us don't even think about that. Gas and maybe maintenance costs. He had to buy stock, 29,000. And then he has a loan somewhere, so he has to pay interest to the bank. So notice the bank's only concerned with the interest. If you don't pay the principal or not, that is your business. As far as they're concerned, their money, they make money on the interest, okay? They make money on the interest. So you have to pay the interest, that's cash out. And there are other costs there, miscellaneous. Try not to keep your miscellaneous too ambiguous, so you know actually where it's going. Then he had some other taxes, expenses here. So when you see the total excluding the VAT, that's 68,000 he made. That's gone out of the business. What is left? 46,000. It's still positive. It's a positive number. So yes, there's a surplus and it's positive. But remember, we said cash is not profit. He still has operating costs that he has to pay. So he had to pay cash to the owner, cash. Okay, so this is cash to the owner, that's he paying himself. Then he has cash at the bank, and that's an overdraft he managed to get. So that technically is like a loan, a short-term loan that he can pull under. Then he has 30,000 he owes, and then creditors, he has 2,500 that people who need to pay him. So that's outstanding, account receivable. He has 33,500 in assets and 37,000 in loans. So obviously he has a lot of loans. It's very extended. So when you look at the right-hand side, here you can see very simple how in a table format, you can calculate his net assets. So cash in the bank, we know this is what he started. Does he have any stocks? Mention any stock over there? Debtors, 25,000. Okay. Assets, 33,500. Bank overdraft. This is what he reviewed, but this is his forecast, right? So, is this making sense? Is this something you can see yourself doing in a very simple manner? Like I will try. It's a good tool. Yeah, I agree. It's a very good and simple tool. So let me wrap it up with this one here. So when you're now using a table for your cash flow statement, it's really important, like I said, cash in, cash out. Just think of it that way. You can do a statement that is weekly. So in a time of crisis, obviously sometimes you can even have like daily cash flow statements because you have to manage it on a daily basis. And sometimes you might just have to use a spreadsheet like this just to keep yourself on track. So during times of crisis, there might even be times where, you know, your business is going through some things are tight. So you might even have to do this on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, just to get through each week. So hopefully it never ever gets to that, but just so that you can see, very simple. On one side, remember, first of all, you have operating activities, investing activities, remember, and financing activities. Financing and investing are two different things. Financing is going into like debt, getting a loan from the bank, paying principal and interest. Investing is what we call with equity, where someone is investing in your business and in return, rather than giving them a loan, you're giving them maybe shares of your company. So it's what you call patient capital, you know, and probably you have to pay back in 5 years. The terms are leaner. So that's equity type of financing. So it's either they're investing or you are investing. So even your activity as an investor is captured here. So if you're doing a capital equipment purchase, you're the investor and it's an investing activity. So these are the three lenses you have to look at: operating, investing, financing. So under operating activities, obviously your sales, if you get any interest, payments to suppliers, all of these are all listed here as operating activities. And then net cash from, so here you can see all the total sales, 15,000. This is just an example. I forgot to put cash at the beginning of the period. I like to put it on top. So I would kind of move it to the top, where I'm starting with my bank account with 2,000 EC. I make some sales, 15,000. I also receive some interest. So in total, I have, and then I also have money going out. So 6,000 went out to suppliers, 3,500, 1,000 for rent. So what is left is 5,400. So it's still positive, but this is what's left this is what's left, plus you have to add that to the starting balance in the beginning to see how much cash is in the bank. Then also there were investing activities. So more money went out. 2,000 went out to purchase equipment. And then I also sold an equipment and gotten $500. So the net cash invested is 1,500. I still have 1,500 out. And then I have a loan. So money came in by a loan. I took a loan for 3,000. And I had to now use 500 for maybe that next month to pay the loan, 500. So what is my net cash from financing? 2,500. So when you add all of it together, my net increase in cash is 6,400. When you add this to the 2,000 in my bank account, that's 8,400. So that shows my cash position. Maybe this is done in a month. So this obviously is a statement, doesn't say what this is a month, a year, whatever, but this is it. Yeah. Always try and make sure your cash flow is positive and is more than your outflow. So with that, it's 8:17. And I hope this session pretty much, we did do a little bit of revenue model innovation, especially looking at opportunities for leveraging agritourism and services in general. We also touched base on types of activities in terms of types of financing activities. We looked at cash flow, and we also looked at the cash flow model canvas and to see how you can optimize your cash flow. So hopefully all this information will make it much easier for you to understand these crazy financial statements with everything in it. Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Donna. It's very straightforward. Okay, great idea. So I think my takeaway, whenever someone tells you about financial literacy and numbers, are you going to run away from these numbers? Are you going to capture them head on? Head on, right? Do not put your head in the sand like an ostrich and go, oh no, I don't want to hear about financials. No, because numbers actually give you clues. Awesome. Well, with that takeaway, I just encourage you, if you haven't done so, for those of you who haven't, that manual, please try that personal financial statement, get comfortable, okay, before you move forward. So thank you again and have a blessed evening. I want to thank Helen's daughter. Wait, Cheryl has her hand up. Okay, Cheryl, floor is yours.
I just wanted to say I really gained an appreciation of accounting only through this program because my husband has been encouraging me to major in accounts for about maybe almost 20 years, and I shied away from it and did everything else. And it's really, really true. A teacher makes a difference.
I guess so.
Yes, so thank you so much. It was a beautiful, beautiful course.
Thank you. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Anybody else have feedback before we wrap up? See what the chat. Okay, you're most welcome, Leah. So I really, really love your class. Michaela, you have something to say?
It's true eye opener. I am grateful for your information, and I will try my utmost to put that in, not just in the head, but to document it and to try my best. Thanks again.
Yeah. You're welcome. Lucia says, I guess it's allocating the financials properly, which seemed difficult. So you have to at least start practicing to put it in. Yes, I can send a sample sheet for bookkeeping. Noted. Sample sheet for bookkeeping is fine. And it's just practice, you know. But the most important thing is get you documenting. I will also be sharing with you a list of digital resources that you could probably use, apps and stuff. Low cost, free, that you could also use for those of you who are more inclined to using technology to simplify your data capture. Yep. All right, it's been a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in your graduation. Keithlin, who's there this evening? Tara, you there? You're most welcome, Deirdre. I'm glad you enjoyed the session. And I just encourage you to have more money conversations at home, amongst yourselves, because listen, men do it all the time. We don't. And so it hurts us a little bit, but men do it all the time. So we should be looking at have a money conversation, even if it's around how you need to optimize a particular service, a particular product, and so on. All right. Awesome, Deborah. So I'll thank you, everyone. And thank you, Tara. Tara, is there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you too for being a fantastic host. And look forward, I hope you do enjoy your agri-tourism session. I think you can make some correlation and start working those numbers. And I want to see by the time we have maybe another program, I would really like to see some of your action plans. Don't forget those activities, because it's all well and good. We do all of this. If you don't write down your plan and your plan of action, nothing's gonna happen. So I encourage you to put it in action. For those of you who are already doing it, amplify, and those of you who are planning, please put what you're learning to use, good use. All right. And hopefully you could apply for other things like the Green Entrepreneurship Accelerator, etc. They have many different types of things you can apply for to get some low-hanging fruit grant financing. You're welcome, Shan. You're welcome, Talia. Okay, stay blessed and stay healthy. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Good night.